that would allow you to guess the word. So, for example, if I were to describe apples to my partner, I could not use the words red, New York, fruit, tree, or worm, because those would be the most popular words to say to get someone to say apple. Instead, what I might say to one of my friends is, it's the nickname for the state in which we live. And they would in turn say, hopefully, the Big Apple. But what I have found in the game of taboo is that we often don't like to pass because we don't want to lose a point. But when you refuse to pass, not only do you lose that point, you lose the whole point of the game. And as much as it kills me to pass, every once in a while, I've found that it is the best thing to do. And don't you wish today in life that before someone says something harmful or ignorant, even with the best intentions, they had the wisdom to pass? Haven't we all been there? In a moment of grief, some well-intentioned comrade comes to offer comfort and creates more chaos, all because they don't possess the proper words and don't know when to pass. Today, I want to challenge you to pass. Pass on placating platitudes. Pass on clueless cliches. Pass on absurd anecdotes. Pass on trivial tete-a-tetes. Pass on hypocritical hype. Pass on preaching parlay. Pass on triggering terminology. Don't you wish today that people had an inner button that would buzz them just like we do in taboo when they say,
yes, yes.
Because you don't know if their loved one is in a better place. They may not have the strength to stop crying. No, they don't have to get over it. Don't you wish that people knew how to possess the power to pass? And I believe Job's friends did and did not get the memo when they sat to comfort him. Now, for the first 7 days, they did everything right. They just sat with him in silence after his affliction. As a matter of fact, they saw, they sat, and they remained silent. That's how we support someone in suffering. They saw Job, not for who he had been, but for where he was in that moment. They sat with Job. They joined him on the ground in a posture of lamentation and contemplation, and then they remained silent. They're sensible enough not to say anything. And according to Jewish tradition, people who come to comfort someone in mourning should not speak until the mourner speaks. Amen.
Amen.
They should not speak until the mourner speaks, proving that the best response to someone's suffering is silence. And here's the interesting thing about this particular narrative. I'm going to submit that we shouldn't speak until the mourner speaks, nor should we speak until the master speaks. Everybody has something to say about Job's situation, Job and his friends, but notice who's silent: God. Here's a short tip. If God doesn't say anything about it, you probably shouldn't either. So today, the good news is actually great news and educational news. Know when to pass, because anything else is taboo.
Amen. Sometimes, silence is golden. Isn't that what we heard?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And words fail you. If they fail you, just shut up. But see, I've learned that because the thing is, I don't know. All I can say is,
I don't know.
I don't know. I can hold your hand and I'm here, but
yeah,
I don't know.
And I found that your presence means more to people than your perspective.
Mm.
In a moment of, please know that your presence is more important than your perspective.
Wow. Why do you, how did you just give me that very, very quickly? Because sometimes you feel like you really do need to say something in these moments of crisis with people. You just feel like, I got to say something. And you're saying to me, no, you don't.
Mm-hmm. I think you don't need to say anything. Sometimes we suffer from, we copy spirituality. We often say things that are empty based on what we heard someone else say. But unless you have the experience, unless you've been through it, unless you intimately know what it is to go through whatever they're suffering, it's better to sit in silence so you don't do more harm than good. Most of the time, people are trying to process their own feelings. And when we add our additional commentary to it, it doesn't help them in most instances. Sometimes it just confuses them. And remember that part about about don't speak until the mourner speaks. They'll let you know when they're ready for your perspective. But until that time, your presence likely, just your physical support, just being there likely means so much more. And especially us, those of us with a spiritual lens, we feel the need to come up with something so insightful and so spiritual. And sometimes in a moment of grief, and grief can be many things, not just death, but in a moment of grief, they are not in a space sometimes to receive that. But they can have their hand held. They will accept a hug. A greeting card will do, a nice meal. All of those things matter. Sometimes more than our words in a time of pain and suffering.
Absolutely. Because then judgment can creep in and all of those things. You know, you're like, well, I said this to you and you didn't receive it that way.
Right. And we inject our own lens. Sometimes in our effort to comfort, we comfort in the way that we want to be comforted. And grief is different for everyone, which is why we cannot paint bereavement with one broad brush. It feels different for different people.
Well, you know, I guess it's like, before you go, I guess it's like raising children, and I've not done that. But, you know, I've contended that people raise children from an egocentric place. I want to give my child what I didn't have. No, you need to give your child what they need. And you need to give your partner, your husband, your wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, partner, you need to give them what they need, not what you think that they need. Don't impose yourself on somebody else. Pastor.
That is correct. That is absolutely correct. And the same holds true in this space. And even in that vein of raising children, each child needs something different.
That's right.
Listen, I'm a very self-aware person. My mom could give my sister a look and break her down. I needed a little more.
Yeah.
I wasn't the look kid. I was more of the snatch you by the collar kid, right? It didn't mean she loved us any differently or loved us any more or less. She just knew what worked for her child, right? She knew which child needed what. It's the same thing when we have this conversation around grief. Everyone grieves differently. And so you cannot comfort each person the same way, which is why sometimes it's best to sit back, take an assessment, look at what's going on so that you can so that when you do say something, it's meaningful. It's meaningful.
To them. Okay.
To them.
Not to
you. Have the right to remain silent.
Please. And as a matter of fact, it's right to remain silent. Shut up. Yes, I did say that. Yes, I did. Because sometimes that's what we just need to do. We just need to shut up.
Amen.
Shh. My brother Jonathan's good for that. He puts his forefinger up to his lips. Shh, don't say anything. Silence. It's golden. It's golden.
I said this to my congregation. I'll say it real quick. If it's going to hurt, hush.
How about that? If it's going to hurt, hush. I'll tell you what Patty Austin said in a session. She said, when in doubt, fall out. Don't mess up the harmony, y'all. No, you don't know the note. I got it. Please don't sing the wrong thing, because it has everybody looking like, what you doing? If it hurts, hush.
I love it.
When in doubt, lay out. That's what she would say. Oh my gosh. You know, very quickly, let me tell you this. Did you know that slavery is on the ballot in several states in the United States this year?
I didn't know that. I'm not surprised by it. I didn't know it. But
in Alabama, Louisiana, Oregon, Tennessee, and Vermont. So it's not just in the Deep South, y'all. It's in Vermont. It's in Oregon. It's in Alabama. It's in Louisiana. It's in Tennessee. And quite frankly, they've been voting on the language of the 13th Amendment since it was enacted more than 150 years ago. And so I just think it's very interesting. I think it's something that we need to talk about today, because as we have these wars and as we, say President Trump and, oh my goodness, Trumpism, I am offended by that. And I'll tell you why I'm offended by that, because we have loaded onto one person all of the ills and sins of the nation. And it's just not fair. It's not true. He's become a spokesman for a particular point of view, a worldview. I'll give you that. But to act as if racism, ethnic nationalism, and all of this began 5, 6, 7 years ago? Are you for real? Oh, no. Darling, for more than 150 years, for a century and a half, slavery's still not off the books in the United States of America. Pastor. See, the 13th Amendment says it's the formal abolition of slavery. You have the slave amendments, the 13th, 14th, and 15th. 13th gave us our freedom. 14th gave us citizenship. And the 15th gave Black men technically the vote. Okay. All right, and then we started going to Congress and all of that. But you are free. This is how it's put. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. Which is why when you look at the prison, the prison industrial complex and how it was really tailored for Black people, the Black codes, that's what sent us there. That's when you understand slavery never really ending. So I want us to talk about that. I want to talk about that today. Let's break down the fact that slavery in America is still legal. It's still legal. And voters can take action. But first you have to know that slavery in America, no, as Teddy Riley said, it ain't over. Call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763 WCPT. I want to hear from you. I want to hear your thoughts. We're going to be talking with Robert Patillo and attorney C.K. Hoffler about it. And then, of course, some of the big races that we're not really talking about. Pastor Tisha Dixon Williams. You have a Black woman in Florida who got 1.2 million votes 2 days ago. Val Demings. That's big. In many polls, she is besting Marco Rubio. That's big news. Mandela Barnes, big news. Charles Booker, big news, but we're not hearing about it. There are more registered Democrats in the state of Kentucky than there are Republicans. If the party gets behind Charles Booker, he can be the senator. But I need to hear MSNBC, CNN, and everybody else talking about him, like they talk about everybody else, starting with Donald Trump, who they're helping to reelect because they've just continued to make him so big. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute. And there is no doubt. I just had to say that to you. I thought you'd like to note that piece.
It's what I needed to hear today.
If you need me to send you anything, I will. I got all those receipts. Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh yeah,
I need all of that.
Yeah, and I will send it to you today. I will. Because I just think it's important for you to know that that's on. Because many people, and I understand it. I like they're frustrated with the Democrats. I understand that. I ain't mad at you. Mm-hmm. Me too. I've been frustrated. Paul on the line. Thank you. Thank you, Paul. I've been frustrated with them for a long time, and I have the blood and the scars to show it. Get it. But I'm here to tell you, and they're not your saviors. No, they're not. And you need to stop treating politicians as saviors. That's just sacrilege. Mm-hmm. That's not what they do. They work for you. How about that piece? That is what they do. That's all that they do. But they play on that with us. That's why, we...
Attorney Hoffler is on the line.
Sure. They ran President Obama as a spiritual figure. That's not what he is. He's a politician. And when you send him or her to that office, they are supposed to deliver for you. And if they're not delivering, you gotta kick them out. If they're not delivering, number one, you have to lobby them to make them deliver. And if then they continue not to deliver to you, then you get them out. I just put it right there. So there we have it. So I will send. Girl, please. I will send you some of these. I will send you some links to some of these stories because they, it's not just in the South. It's Vermont. It's Oregon. It's Tennessee. It's Louisiana. It's Alabama. But they've been voting on this amendment for years, but we don't talk about it.
Attorney Patillo is on the line.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Attorney Robert Patillo.
Good morning.
Good morning. We've got Attorney C.K. Hoffler and Pastor Tisha Dixon Williams. Hey, girlie. Pastor Tisha Dixon Williams, who'll be leaving us in a hot second, but I just had to You know, I had to pull her because she's so profound, so anointed.
And good morning, Robert and Pastor. Good morning.
I know there's
Good
a
morning.
sermon in that. I know it.
Oh, it is. For sure.
Okay, because
There needs to be a
Colorado.
sermon.
Oh, look, let me do. Well, you know, this is a preaching machine right here, so I want to hear it. How about that? Oh, shoot. Whew. Then I came across this story. I was hoping to ask Dr. Knighton about it, but I sure will. Almost 40% of people hospitalized in the U.S. with the COVID subvariant that circulated this spring were vaccinated and boosted, highlighting how new strains have mutated to more readily escape the immunity offered by current shots. In other words, the mutations don't work with the current vaccines. Y'all just tell us. And just tell us to wash our hands and to take the vitamin C and the vitamin D. Just, that's all I need you to do. Let me know. It's a layer of protection. It's not the whole thing. Come on, y'all. Chapeau, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, Santita.
Okay, you say hello to everyone, Chapeau.
Coming back in 30 seconds.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Chappelle.
Okay, everybody, like and share the show. Like and share, like and share, like and share, like and share. Okay, thank you, Linear Bob.
10 seconds.
Thank you.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am green.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. Call me at 773-763-9278. 773-763-WCPT. All of my morning stars, please like and share this show. Like and share, like and share, like and share this show with someone. Hey, Alpen, Paula. Thank you, Paula. I ain't mad at you, Tupac. This is like the ultimate hip hop queen. I'm Santita Jackson coming to you from WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. Why slavery is still legal in America. That is from the NAACP Legal Defense and Education Fund. Slavery is on the ballot, and Alabama, Louisiana, Oregon, Tennessee, and Vermont in November 2022. And in 2018, it was on the ballot in Colorado, Nebraska, and Utah. Why is it on the ballot? Why is slavery still legal in America, in state by state by state? Got to talk with attorney C.K. Hoffler and attorney Robert Patillo about it. But first up, got to get some good vittles from Celebrations by Us, Chapeau Wells. How you doing, Chapeau?
Good morning, Santita. I'm doing great, and Celebrations by Us is having a great weekend. We have several events that we're planning this weekend, and we're getting out our balloon arches as well as also our custom suite tables. We're doing this weekend a birthday party as well as also a baby shower. So don't hesitate to give us a call at 708-526-4546. 708-526-4546. We do provide full decor as well as also food and our sweet table. So whether you need some chocolate covered strawberries, some pretzels, some custom cookies, whatever it is that you need, don't hesitate to give us a call. 708-526-4546. 708-526-4546. And lastly, Santita, I just wanted to give a happy birthday shout out to Faith and Sahara. They're turning 5 today.
Yay.
And they're so excited. They just started kindergarten on Monday, so this has been an exciting week for them, and there's this way that they can kick off their birthday weekend. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Well, you know what Linear Bob just said? He loves you as a contributor because you ask good questions. Are you surprised then? Let me lead this segment off with you. Are you surprised that in Alabama, Louisiana, Oregon, Tennessee, and Vermont, slavery is on the ballot?
I will say I am, Santita, because, I mean, it is 2022. Why are we talking about slavery? I mean, At what point do we get past us being slaves? And the world has taught us to forget about this history, this storied history of America, that America has changed, and we no longer require this indentured servitude for free. But I guess in these states, they're saying that, yeah, we do. We like the fact that we could have people working for us for free. So
not for free,
ballot.
without pay.
Unpaid.
Nothing in life is free. See, if we work for free, we don't need reparations, right? Okay, so it wasn't free. We were not paid. Staple Singers have a wonderful song that I heard as a little girl. I heard it one time, but it stayed with me in all these years. When will we be paid for the work we've done? I heard it in Accra, Ghana at the Independence Celebration in 1971, C.K. Hoffler and Robert Patillo. And I can't believe that song. I heard it one time. And it has never, ever left my spirit, ever. When will we be paid for the work we've done? And they sang that to our African brothers and sisters while we were there. I'm so grateful to God that my parents took me on that trip. That was just wonderful. We went to the point of no return. Roberta Flack we went down into the slave dungeon. She started singing "Oh Freedom." And it's in a movie called Soul to Soul. So if you want to see me with my little afro from back in the day, yes, I did have one. Go on and see that movie. All right, everybody. Why is slavery still legal in America? Why is it still on the ballot? Even in Colorado, Nebraska, and Utah in 2018, this was a ballot initiative. Now, thankfully, it passed. C.K. Hoffler, Attorney C.K. Hoffler, past international president of the National Bar Association, and Attorney Robert Patillo, and she's the chair of Rainbow Push, and Robert Patillo, who is the Southeastern Regional Director for Rainbow Push, brilliant civil rights lawyer. They both have shows on WAOK every Tuesday at 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. You can catch CK's show from 1 to 4 every Sunday. You can catch Robert Patillo's show. What is your take on this, CK Hoffler?
Good morning, Santita. Good morning to this wonderful panel. And what I take on this is that this is just a travesty. This is just a travesty. If we look at this in the context of where we are in this country, where critical race theory, there's a debate over critical race theory, the inability in certain states to teach Black history, to teach about slavery, to teach about indentured servants, to teach about the awful history that led us to this point. If we think about the fact that there is a movement afoot to ensure that only half of U.S. history be taught in school. And then you think about in many states on the ballot is the question of slavery. Should slavery be allowed? It's confusing to people. It's foolishness. It's distressing. It's terrible. It's inconsistent with everything that we hope this country is about, but it's real. So that's what I feel about it. From a legal standpoint, when I unpack it, there's some constitutional issues. We know that slavery technically is illegal. I just want to remind everybody that when the framers of the Constitution drafted the Constitution, Black folks were not considered to be full-fledged human beings. So we were, not full-fledged human beings. We have to bear that in mind. The reason why that's important, and it's important for us to look at this question, is because for the reversal or overturning of Roe versus Wade, the analysis that was used by Justice Alito went along these lines. Well, the framers of the Constitution did envision that women would have the right to choose over their reproductive rights, and therefore, because it was an envision, there was not a specific right, an individual right for a woman to choose what to do with her body. She should not have that constitutional protection. Now, that's some craziness. Because if you think about it, that can be used to justify anything, take away any rights in this country. So the fact that we're having this discussion, it's on the ballot in many states, to get rid of, to protect, specifically preclude slavery or indentured servitude is, I think, both crazy and both informative or instructive of where this country is today, unfortunately. So that it's on the ballot. Okay, let's just have the states proclaim it is illegal. It is not constitutional according to their state constitutions as well, despite the fact that slavery has been outlawed for quite some time in this country. But I do encourage people to remember that slavery is both a question of rights. Can you be held in captivity against your will? But it's also a question of a mindset. And perhaps while it is out loud on the book from a federal standpoint, there is a mindset that permeates in some people's minds that believe that slavery is still legal and should be legal, and people should be allowed to work without being compensated. That's where I think it's more dangerous. A state of mind, and who use in a very crafty way state laws and other laws to circumvent federal law.
Robert Patillo, your thoughts? I mean, we've been voting on this. It's been more than 150 years. We're still voting on this. I mean, the language says it all. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime, whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. Now, that's Section 1 of the 13th Amendment. What does that mean? Let's start there.
Well, I think what people have to understand is that when the post-Civil War amendments were passed, they were intended to remedy the issues of that day. So the concept of chattel slavery and hereditary slavery, they were attempting to outlaw those as existed within the American system prior to that time. If you went back to the 1790s, for example, they outlawed the transatlantic slave trade, but they continue to have the slave trade within the United States. Then after the Civil War, they outlawed chattel slavery and hereditary slavery, but at the same time, they made clear exceptions that slavery could still be instituted as punishment for a crime, for example, as a punishment for or to force somebody to pay a debt and other exceptions. So since the quote-unquote outlawing of slavery in the after the Civil War, we never actually ended slavery. If you take slavery, and there's a great documentary on this, 13th on Netflix from Michelle Alexander that came out a few years ago. It's still very poignant. But if you look at the convict lend-lease system that existed, if you look at the prison labor system that existed, if you look at the sharecropping and Jim Crow systems that were in place, it was not technically slavery, but if you were bound to land and instead of being paid a wage, you were giving food, board, and housing in exchange for field work in the American South, you were in a condition indistinguishable from slavery. If you look at what goes on today, if you take the word slavery out and you simply say instead of unpaid, low paid, then you end up in a very similar outcome when you look at, for example, firefighters in California who they fight the wildfires that happen each year, and they are paid a de minimis at best wage, a wage so low that it's nearly impossible for them to actually be considered actual payment. If you look at other states, Louisiana, the Angola prison, where now they're attempting to move juvenile inmates to the adult prison, they use inmate labor in order to fill sandbags and rebuild levees to protect from storms. So we've never actually outlawed slavery. We just simply changed the conditions around. And if you notice, you never see these white-collar criminals be put into wildfire duty. You never see the Bernie Madoffs of the world or the Roger Stones and the Steve Bannons being put on sandbag duty or pressing license plates or much of the other labor that is appointed to prison laborers. So we've actually never outlawed it in America. We simply changed the conditions. So if you make a condition where you can still be enslaved based upon your criminal record or based upon a crime that you've committed, and then you over-prosecute or over-criminalize African American and brown communities, effectively you'll just simply add an extra step. You now pass go, you now collect $200, and then you get to slavery. And that's the condition we are in today. And because so few people care about the rights of those individuals who are incarcerated. This system's been able to continue for 150 years under the guise of criminal justice, when in reality it's simply a modernized system, a response, a countermeasure to those post-Civil War amendments, so we can continue the system in place until this day.
Because indeed, the Department of Justice ran a program, a PPI program, and Victoria's Secret and other corporations used labor within the prisons to make our lingerie, our denims, and on and on and on, CK. I mean, and no one talks about that. So, I mean, when you look at Leslie Wexner and his vast fortune, it didn't cost him anything really, virtually, to get it made. And when there is a gentleman who's been in solitary confinement for years, he's as a prisoner has been fighting for the rights of prison laborers, imprisoned laborers. Can't get any traction. And then, of course, the vote. In many places, people are able to vote in prison, but they put so many hurdles, CK, in between you and the vote. I mean, and mind you, these are law enforcement officers. Hello? Enforce the law and let me vote in here. Well, what?
Well, Santita, one of the things that your dad, Reverend Jackson, has been so successful in doing, we're permissible in states. He's registered and vote and facilitated them voting. And because certain inmates, depending upon the crime that they've committed, are allowed to vote in some states, some jurisdictions. So that is really the right to vote. It should be sacrosanct in this country, but we know that there's so much voter suppression. We talk about it a lot on this show because it's particularly relevant given that we're facing the upcoming midterm elections, and there's suppression everywhere in places like Georgia where I live. But no, this is a really important issue. It's a distressing issue because I look at it more. There are a lot of philosophical discussions about this. People talk about this philosophically. They are in denial that these things are happening. But the truth of the matter is that they are happening. And I, again, encourage people to think of slavery of mind, the mindset. What people, some big corporations, some individuals are allowed to get away with because they do have the resources to promulgate a form of slavery. So as tragic as it is, as distressing as it is, as conflicted as I feel about it, it probably needs to be on the ballot, although it's distressing that it is on the ballot in 2022. So it needs to be on the ballot, but I bet dollars to donuts, and I'm not a betting woman, that there are people that believe that slavery should be legal, that it is legal,
See,
and it should continue
hold on, CK, because it's a ballot initiative. I didn't say that there was unanimous consent. Some people actually believe that slavery is all right under certain conditions, CK.
Yep.
I mean, I know it's hard to believe we're having this conversation in 2022, but I think it's very important as we're talking about reducing and eliminating student loan debt, as we're talking about the American dream for people. People don't really believe in it. They don't. People say they believe in God. They don't really, because if you don't want to feed all God's children, if you don't want to make sure that all God's children are all right, you don't believe in God. If you don't want to give a woman prenatal care, and if you don't believe in daycare for children and all, you don't tell me about being pro-life. You don't want to make sure people eat and have food, clothing, and shelter. Just shut up, because you are not pro-life. You are not Christian, Muslim, Buddhist, Jewish, or anything else, because all the great religions of the world and all the great thought tells you that people should be provided for and cared for. So please be quiet. I'm tired of it, Robert, really. Because we are litigating slavery in 2022. And these ballot initiatives, I didn't say that they were winning by 100%. No, they're debated today. This is up for debate.
Oh, there's that.
Also, we have to think about what are the criteria for slavery. In the state of Georgia, the state minimum wage is still $5.15 an hour. Now, it's superseded by the federal minimum wage, but as we've talked about previously, we're going to see a rash of legislation before the Supreme Court that's going to go after the Interstate Commerce Clause in the next term with the current 6-3 majority on the court. More than likely, much of that progeny is going to be struck down. So states like Georgia, Alabama, Florida, Arizona, Mississippi, that have not gotten in line with federal standards, you can see people's pay be dropped back down from the $7.25 they're getting now back to the $5.15 an hour that it was when I was in high school 20 plus years ago. So if you're paying somebody $5 or even $7 an hour to work a job, is that not still slavery? Because let's remember, the people, when our ancestors were worked without pay, they were still given room, board, housing, food, some level of medical care, because they were an investment for their enslavers. So they were not physically paid cash money, but you can say that there was value exchanged. If you are working somebody today and you pay them a wage that does not afford them the ability to even eat the food that they are putting into a bag, not being able to afford housing over their head, not being able to afford clothes on their back, is that truthfully any different than a condition of slavery, or is it just simply by a different name? Let's think about the slavery of debt that we put people in. Donald Trump runs up a couple $2 billion in debt, bankrupts it out, moves on to the next one, keeps it going. I think he's had 14 different bankruptcies over the years to get out from under debt. The normal person, you file for bankruptcy, you can't buy a hamburger for the next 10 years until you get your credit back straight. When we talk about the slavery of debt that we put people in this country, you sign up for a credit card freshman year of college, here you are 35, 40 years old, you can't buy a house. So when we talk about this condition of servitude, this condition of slavery, we have to expand out the definition. Slavery is not simply wearing tattered rags and being beat with a whip. It's whenever you lack the ability to have self-determination, wherever you lack the ability to make decisions for yourself, whenever a master has the ability to dictate to you the terms of your life. And what we've done in this country, the same way that in Europe, they didn't call it slavery, but they called it serfdom. They called it feudalism. They called you had plebiscites. You had a peasant class. You didn't call them slaves, but the conditions were very similar to that. So we have to expand out this definition when we're talking about fighting back against these things. And I think many people will realize you may be enslaved today and not even know it if you're enslaved by debt, enslaved by low wages, enslaved by a lack of options to move forward. And when we talk about much of these criminal issues within Black communities, a lot of it are slave revolts, and we don't see it in that context because we have different clothes on and we have different verbiage around it, but you're seeing much of the same practical results coming out of it. So we have to fight back against this system that insists upon inflicting this upon communities, because at the end of the day, if you went back to 1840 and talked to somebody on a plantation in Savannah, Georgia, they might not even know they were being enslaved at that time, because the verbiage is different. They're taught it a different way.
What did Harriet Tubman say, CK and Attorney Robert Patillo? I could have freed so many more if they'd only known they were slaves. You know, I think that today, part of the pushback that you're seeing in the United States, and people are putting it under the Trump umbrella, and all those people don't belong there. It is a pushback against wage slavery. It's a pushback against being indebtedness enslaves you. You don't have the freedom, CK, to speak out and to be a dissenter, to be a dissident, if you will, if you have debt, if you have no money. You just can't do it, CK. And I think that we need to be aware of this. I think we need to be aware of the fact that just as late as 2018, slavery was voted on in Colorado, Nebraska, and Utah. We keep thinking that this is solely the problem of the South, instead of it being an American dilemma. I've got a couple of minutes. They belong to you, CK.
Well, this is an American dilemma, Santita, as you stated accurately. But again, I want us to look at this question in the prism of slavery of mind and actual slavery that's on the books. And the fact that this is on the ballot in various states is something that we really have to look at very closely because it informs, as I said before, what's going on in this country. But we are where we are. It is what it is. And we need to continue to fight just like we fight other fights, fighting to vote. I mean, we should have the right to vote really, truly, and not have to face voter suppression. This is something that we have to keep our eye on because the country is turning back. It's going backwards.
Mm-hmm.
And if we need any evidence of that, let's just look at the discussion around critical race theory and what should and shouldn't be taught in schools. So this is something that needs to be fought. We have to keep our eye on the prize, vote, continue to vote, and get slavery, the legalization of slavery, out of this country because it will make us a worse country. And when you talk about some real issues, if it is codified in any state, and then it will escalate up to the U.S. Supreme Court, and only Lord knows what would happen.
Well, Clarence Thomas is going to say, if you've committed a crime, you do need to be enslaved. Although you made the point, Robert, that they don't have Bernie Madoff. They don't have the white collar criminals risking their lives to put out the California fires and doing that work. They don't have them doing that. No, they don't. They really, really don't. Coming up, everybody, let's talk about Val Demings, Congresswoman Val Demings from Florida, former chief of police of Orlando, Florida, Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes of Wisconsin, former state representative Charles Booker of Kentucky. These are three of the biggest races in the country. These persons won the Democratic nominations to the U.S. Senate in huge numbers. And yet the mainstream media, the corporate media, they're not pushing them every day. Is it any wonder that we talk about President Trump all the time? Because he's mentioned every day. They've never stopped mentioning him. And you need to watch that because they know exactly what they're doing. By mentioning him, you're enlarging him. When you keep someone off of television, someone off of radio, you minimize him. At least that's what you seek to do. I mean, when was the last time you saw, a whole lot of civil rights spokespersons on television? You don't see them on television unless some of us get shot. Think about that. But every day, all day, I got to listen to someone tell me about President Trump, the same guy that they lifted up in 2015. Oh, come on. Let's talk about these winnable races, these persons who, oh my gosh, they went by huge margins, but we're not hearing about them. Let's talk about it on the Santita Jackson Show back in just a minute. Whew. Well, Robert and CK, it's just a whole lot to think about, y'all. Oh, okay. Now, Dawn says that Robert and CK, we need your help in Georgia. Our prisons are inhumane, deadly, and unconstitutional, and the prison laborers should be paid. I hear you. And Terry McCrimmon says it's like we're living in the Matrix. Yes, the system is tailored to keep us in a permanent underclass. Of course, that has always been it. Abraham, my sweet. Abraham thinks that I ignore him because he's one of our white brothers from, are you from Brazil, sweetie? Where are you from? Just give that to me again. But that's not true. I don't have a problem with interracial relationships at all. No. I just can't talk to everybody during the show, but I'm sending you much love today. No, I have no problem with interracial relationships, honey, just for the record, at all. I just can't talk to everybody during the show. But I thank you for checking us out. I just love my Abraham. And Andre, how you doing, sweetie? Linear Bob, Dave Dowling. Ooh. Shirley from beautiful Philadelphia. Let us not forget that. Jewel from New York. Joy Santa Crump, how you doing, sweetie? And Kenneth Rush. Max from D.C. How you doing, Lee? Michael Washington. How you doing? Teresa Wilkins. How you doing, my sweet? Tony Barker from Seattle, Washington. Boy, you all get up early out there. I'm sending you much love and appreciate it. Mrs. Zenobia. How you doing? All right. Barbara Bacon from Oak Park. Matt from Minneapolis, St. Paul. Gave you some special love today, of course. And with Sabira Muhammad. How you doing? Oh, Minister Ava Muhammad made her transition. Oh my gosh. May peace be upon her. God bless you. Thank you for that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I did not know that. I did not know that. I did not know that. Thank you for that. Oh boy. Okay, okay. All right, my wonderful people. So what do you all think about the coverage that Val Demings and Mandela Barnes and Charles Booker are getting? Because we hear about Raphael Warnock, who's been breaking fundraising records. But beyond that.
Yeah. I think absolutely nothing about the coverage that they've been getting. Absolutely nothing positive. It's really tragic and it's disgraceful because what it shows and what it can show, and there are a lot of people fighting against this, and I'm glad to see people fighting against this, is if you're not on primetime television every day, all day, then you don't exist.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if it's not, it's sort of like in one of my practice areas is medical negligence. If it's not in the medical record, it didn't happen. Well, it's getting to the point where if you're not on corporate media or primetime television, you just didn't exist. The race didn't happen. You didn't win. You're not relevant. And so that's why I say I think absolutely nothing of the coverage, nothing good. I think that it's a fallacy. You know, you're supposed to, when people are running for office, you're supposed to give equal time to all the candidates. I don't even know about Demings is getting the kind of coverage in Florida. But let me tell you one thing, though, that I will say. She's getting a lot of traction because a lot of people, she resonates with a lot of people. And she has crossover appeal. And she's paid her dues. I probably get a text from her every single day, like many people, every single day, about her position, where she's from, why it's important, why she should be the next senator from the state of Florida, why this, why that. Very uplifting and positive text. So now is the time. Now is the time. Because, and she's raising great money.
Oh, absolutely.
But I think it's important for progressive radio shows, progressive television, all television, all radio, to say her name. Say her name. Just as people say other people's names, say her name. Speak her truth. Because the citizens of Florida obviously want to hear her name. And but you certainly could get a lot of traction if you had national media, because what that would do is that would enhance the fundraising effort, and she would be able to go a lot further because she's up against an incredible machinery.
Absolutely.
An incredible machinery in the state of Florida. I know I used to live in Florida. I still practice in Florida. Florida's no joke when it comes to politics. And Florida is just as special as Georgia. And I leave the word special to everybody's interpretation because I live in Georgia and I lived in Florida. I practice in Georgia and I practice in Florida. So when I say special, I mean special.
Well, you are tough and sturdy, my sister. But I live in Chicago. But you are tough and sturdy.
Well, you got to be tough to be living in Chicago, too.
No, but honey, Florida.
And I say that because but these are all places that we love, Santita. These are not places that we don't love. We love Chicago. We love Florida. We love Georgia. But they're places where things are kind of difficult, not kind of, are significantly difficult. Voter suppression at record levels in both Florida and Georgia. This is not, a matter of interpretation. It's a matter of fact. And so when we say how we're feeling about this, what is our
back in 1 minute
of coverage, and how well some of these political people, these African American or Black and brown politicians are doing against significant odds, and they're not getting the coverage. I mean, of course, it makes you feel some kind of way, but that's the reality in which we live. And so it makes us also understand how extraordinary these politicians are to be these political figures, these leaders are to be able to produce and do as well as they do despite those odds, because other candidates have the full-fledged benefit of corporate or other media.
Oh, of course. But what did Reverend say? I'm sending you a number of someone that you should call. Thank you so much, Paul. It's just, I saw how they handled Reverend, and he succeeded against all odds Just put, whew,
Yeah.
We can change the
stand by.
world. Change the world. Change the world. We can change the world. We can change the world. Change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love. It's not too late. Gotta save the children. We can't wait. Let's change the world. I am green.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station. Paul, reach out to Dave Daly. Just sent me another text. Hey, Monty said he's not connecting well, but he's going to be with us. Of course, he's the New York Times bestselling author of Rat Effed and Unrigged, as we talk about these big races that are getting little coverage. Val Demings, she won 1.2 million votes in Florida. She is beating Marco Rubio in most of the polls. What's going on? Mandela Barnes. Why aren't we talking about him every day? The 35-year-old lieutenant governor of Wisconsin. He is in a highly competitive race with the sitting senator, Ron Johnson. What about Charles Booker? There are more registered Democrats in the state of Kentucky than there are Republicans. Why are we not fighting to get these people into the U.S. Senate? As we're watching Black candidates for the U.S. Senate smash fundraising records, according to this Guardian report. That's right, smashing records. There have only been 11 Black senators. And yes, race is a factor. There have only been 11 Black senators since 1789. That having been said, race is part of it. Absolutely. Now, if you had someone as exciting as Val Demings, a former chief of police, a sitting congresswoman, if you had a white woman running, well, she'd get pushed back too, because sexism is real too. So we've just got a lot going on that we're going to talk about today. Corporate media is not pushing these candidates, and we need to talk about why and what it is that we can do to get them across the line. All right, everybody, I want you to call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. Let us talk. Got Daily up. I'm so excited, and we're going to be talking with you in a hot second, but let me get some of these headlines out of the way. It's a cold day in Chicago here at WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, 73 degrees, partly cloudy. Minneapolis, St. Paul, AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota, 81 degrees, mostly sunny. I feel autumn creeping in. Major League Baseball, the Orioles 4, the White Sox 3, Cardinals 8, the Cubs 3, Astros 6, the Twins 3. I think that the Chicago teams and Atlanta and Minneapolis, St. Paul were in a conspiracy just to get 3 runs yesterday. Come on, y'all. You got to win this weekend. And the Dow closed up 322 points yesterday, and the NASDAQ closed up 207 points, and the S&P 500 closed up 58 points. Very interesting look. President Biden's job rating has risen to 44%. It's the highest in a year. He's been struggling. He's been in the mid-30s all year. But now, after hitting a record low in July, he's up 6 percentage points, his highest in a year. This uptick represents a significant improvement on the heels of several policy wins for him. But he still remains underwater overall, with 53% of Americans disapproving of his job performance. Interestingly enough, 34%, nearly 3/4 of Americans, 74%, a whopping 74% of Americans say that the United States is on the wrong track. This is a poll from NBC News. That's right, more than half of the country worry that the best years are behind us. And then there's a University of Michigan study that shows that anger motivates most people to vote. There are many reasons for January 6th, and that is among them. We have to remember that, everybody. There's a lot going on in America. In the meantime, a U.S. magistrate judge, Bruce Reinhart, a federal judge in Florida, on Thursday ordered the U.S. Department of Justice to release a redacted version of the affidavit used to justify the FBI investigation's August 8th search of former President Trump's Mar-a-Lago residence. In Ukraine, their main nuclear power plant, which is occupied by Russian forces, was disconnected from the country's power grid for the first time on Thursday. Increased shelling near the plant has recently triggered calls for international experts to visit the facility. and ratcheted up fears of a potential nuclear accident. But maybe if they disconnected, they might not have one. I don't know. Record rainfall and flash floods in Mississippi have stranded residents, washed away roads, and derailed a train this week. The city of Jackson picked up more than 5 inches of rain on Wednesday, setting a record as the wettest August day the city has ever experienced. Jackson Mayor Chokwe Lumumba has called for voluntary evacuations in areas that are at risk of flooding. Separately, at least 33 million people have been affected by deadly floods in Pakistan, in what some of the country's officials have called, quote, the worst humanitarian disaster of the decade. We're not hearing enough about that. That's a lot. That's a lot of people who are really, really struggling. Google search and maps will now say if clinics provide abortions. They were not doing that. And then there are trigger laws that are being kicked off all around the country that are banning abortions. So women are needing to terminate pregnancies, but they're not able to do that. And remember, most pregnancies are ended not surgically now. 54% are ended medically by a pill. Think about that, everybody. So what about groups that are now applauding the Pentagon's new civilian casualty action plan? Human rights groups were cautiously optimistic yesterday as the U.S. military, which has killed more civilians in foreign wars than any other armed force on earth in the post-World War II era, let that sink in, published a plan meant to reduce non-combatant casualties. It's called the Civilian Harm Mitigation and Response Action Plan. It's 46 pages. It lays out policy steps aimed at preventing and responding to the death and injury of non-combatants. Let us hope that it works. In the meantime, we're talking about financial freedom, everybody. Financial freedom, it can be yours. Do you have credit? Has your credit been damaged? Do you have huge credit card balances? Do you need to build your credit? Do you need to rebuild your credit? I want you to call Team Hochberg. They can give you a free consultation. Tell them everything. They've heard it all. And they can help you to get on the road to financial freedom. Think about this, everybody. If you want to purchase a home, is your credit score what it needs to be? Maybe not. They can help you to work on that and get it together. They will lay out a concrete plan for you to own a home. What about refinancing your existing home? Have you been turned down by the VA, by FHA? Well, they can work with you on that. If you want to secure these loans, if you need a reverse mortgage, if you just want to know what it's about, call Team Hochberg, and it's a free call. It's a free call to tell them everything. 56david.com is how you can reach them online, but call them at 855-56-DAVID, 855-56-DAVID. You will not lose anything. You will gain. Tom and Sonia, 2 kids, constantly struggle to pay their 6% mortgage and the minimum payments on their 17 credit cards that gave them what? $100,000 in debt. So they called Team Hochberg for a free consultation, and guess what? They were able to secure an FHA loan, pay off their 17 credit card debts, and they reduced their monthly payments by over $2,800. That could be you. That could be you. So call them at 855-56-DAVID, 855-56-DAVID. You don't have to tell anybody, but I tell you what, you don't need to be ashamed. A lot of people are struggling. 56david.com is where you can also find them online. They're your trusted lender. I'm going to get David Hochberg here in the next few days. He's working with a young woman who I met at Pearl's Restaurant, one of my favorite restaurants, owned by someone I went to grammar school with, James Riley, Jr. And he's helping her to become a homeowner. And we're going to talk about where they are in terms of their progress. Going to be following them. All right, everybody. What about these Black candidates who are smashing fundraising records? They've been doing it, quite frankly, the whole midterm season since 2021. Val Demings raised $8.5 million. Raphael Warnock has raised almost $10 million. There have only been 11 Black senators since the founding of the Republic, since the chamber first convened in 1789. But we could see those numbers jump this year. Mandela Barnes, lieutenant governor of the great state of Wisconsin, who everybody stood down. They said, this young man, this 35-year-old, has a bright future. He's the best hope to take on Senator Ron Johnson. What about Charles Booker? Charles Booker, who came within inches, not even inches, centimeters of winning that nomination. He went from 5% name recognition in 2018 to nearly winning, but the Democratic National Committee stepped in and supported Amy McGrath, lovely woman, but she lost. She lost. Someone who goes from zero to hero, why didn't you stand behind him? Well, guess what? Now, by more than 70%, he won the Democratic nomination. There are more registered Democrats in the state of Kentucky than there are Republicans. He could win. It's a very winnable seat for him. Mandela Barnes, Val Demings, Charles Booker. Why aren't we hearing more about these races in corporate media? Well, we don't need to wait on them, but you certainly do need to ask the question, since you're looking at MSNBC, CNN, and everything else and quoting them all day, every day. You need to ask them, why don't you have them on TV? Why aren't you talking about them all the time? Why aren't you having your pundits put their names out there and their talking points? Because that's how it works. I've been a pundit. I get it. So, Attorney C.K. Hoffler, immediate past president of the National Bar Association, the largest and oldest black bar association in the world, the chair of Rainbow Push, and host of her own show on WAOK every Tuesday at 11 Eastern Standard Time. Of course, the host of his own show on WAOK from 1 to 4 every Sunday. The Southeastern Regional Director from Rainbow Push. Of course, we have got none other than Robert Patillo and David Daly, New York Times best-selling author, Rat Effed, and Unrigged. And of course, we're going to be talking with attorney Aaron Connolly. Let me start with you, David Daly. These are some great winnable races, but we're not hearing corporate media espouse the virtues of these great candidates who won overwhelmingly, each one of them, in their Democratic primaries.
Good morning.
Good morning.
These are fascinating races and fascinating candidates, and such a marked difference between the candidates that Democrats ran in many of these U.S. Senate seats back in 2020. Listen, the U.S. Senate is closely divided, a 50-50 right now. The Democrats have got a pretty good chance, I would say, of holding control of the chamber, but it's going to be super close. It's going to come down to 1 or 2 seats on either side. And so you need to really invest in the various pathways that can lead you to 50, 51, 52 seats. And I would argue that, what we have seen out of the U.S. Congress and the U.S. Senate this year is that Democrats can control the Senate, but if they've only got 50 votes and Manchin and Sinema stand in the way of changing filibuster rules, we're not going to get any progress. So I would suggest that Democrats have got to find a way to 52 seats in the U.S. Senate, and that's going to require going out and winning some of these races that perhaps the pundits and the corporate media say are stretches. But
why do they say they're stretches when you win by 70 and 80%? I mean, talk to me about that.
Well, Kentucky is a complicated state. You might have more Democrats registered, but in fact, that speaks perhaps more to Kentucky's complicated racial politics over the years, and where the Democrats and Republicans once stood on these issues before parties realigned. Mitch McConnell knocked out Amy McGrath by 20 points back in 2020, and Amy McGrath raised $90 million. So is Kentucky winnable this year? I don't know the answer to that. I think it's a stretch. I think it's a difficult race if you look at the numbers here. But this is about building power. What Amy McGrath did in 2020 was raise money. I live in Massachusetts, and I used to see her ads here on TV. And I'm like, why are you advertising to me, in the middle of the Chris Hayes show? And it's because she was treating MSNBC viewers around the country as sort of an ATM machine to raise money.
But wait a minute, but she got on him. They brought her on so she could do that, David.
Sure. And she was raising money to buy expensive ads so that she could raise more money. And what I see Charles Booker doing in Kentucky is trying to build power. He's taking bus tours out into rural Kentucky. He is trying to actually show up in places where they probably haven't seen a Democratic politician show up in a long time. And these are the races that, you might not win the first time, but next time, this is about long-term power building. And it's something Republicans have long understood, and Democrats maybe are just learning. And I think in the Booker campaign, you can see how this is going to pay off long-term.
So what do you say, Aaron Connolly? I mean, because you have been working in Arizona, one of these complicated states. See, they're complicated, but Amy McGrath, she did raise money, but that was it. She didn't raise cane. No one was excited about her. Chuck Schumer stepped in the race and stood behind her against Charles Booker, who had gone from 5% name recognition to being the front runner. Why do we continue to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory? I mean, get behind this man and push him. Oh, do you think I'm wrong here?
Exactly.
Okay.
No. I think you're absolutely right, Santita. I think what we as Democrats need to do is exactly what we saw happen in Wisconsin in the primary. We saw the reputable candidates that were primary opponents of Mandela Barnes drop out before the primary and say, he has the momentum. Let's put all of our chips where we have the best shot, right? And not only are we making a bet on that, but we're organizing on it too. So it's not just the money. It's the time and the treasure. We need both things, and we need to do it for the person that the people believe in, that has the momentum. Momentum comes from deep community organizing and the political power of the people. We've seen that proven time and time again. We've seen it in congressional races. We've seen it where folks are saying, oh, they don't have quite enough money. Well, as you use these examples of Amy McGrath, or I think another interesting one in the general was Sarah Gideon against Susan Collins, who had millions and millions of dollars left over after her defeat. So how you use the money is important, right? And what we see when we as a person who's a big fan of the targeted digital organizing, which is a media buy that doubles down on the community building that you're doing, it still takes 22 online impressions for a voter to really make a dent in that space, right? So if you're spending hundreds of $1,000s on an MSNBC TV ad to get more money, that wouldn't be my recommendation as a consultant on your team there, if you really want the votes, right? So that's a whole nother conversation. But the establishment needs to really start taking a hard look at the people who not only locally have the momentum and push those people in the primaries in a way that makes sense, that resonates with the voters, because this is another way the party sheds down their credibility when I think the Kentucky example is particularly apt in this regard, right? We see a candidate who has excitement, who has momentum, and then the establishment comes in and says, but we prefer this person, and we're going to put millions of dollars behind them. So candidates do need good financial investment. It is about talking to those voters, but you have to do the organizing at the same time. And Santita, we saw this in your brother Jonathan's race in Illinois. We saw this with the Delia Ramirez campaign. She was able to bridge that gap in fundraising, but also talk to more voters, was in more communities, had offices in multiple neighborhoods. You have to do that work, and that makes a difference. And we see these candidates, Black Latino candidates, that are traditionally not the first choice of investment for an establishment or a corporate system. But these are the folks that speak to the issues of the people, that are doing the work of the Transformative Justice Coalition, actually talking to voters where they are. And that is what makes the difference. And we see that time and time again.
Well, do you think that's why, Robert, according to this 9-month-old, I mean, now this is almost a year old, this report from The Guardian that showed that Black candidates for the U.S. Senate were smashing fundraising records a year ago, in advance of the 2022 midterms. And Raphael Warnock is just raising money left and right and left, and he needs it. I'm glad to see it. But I mean, are you surprised by that information? And indeed, we're seeing Latino candidates do the same thing. They are really, these Black and Latino candidates are raising a lot of money, particularly they're dominating the fourth quarter top fundraisers.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting because I like looking at comparative models, and one of those comparative models is looking at the difference between Republicans and Democrats over the course of the last decade or so, let's say since the Obama first term. And what we've seen is a wholesale reimagining and reconstruction of the Republican Party, not once but twice in that period of time. You have the Tea Party revolution that kind of started between the 2010 midterm election through 2014, when you had all these Ted Cruzes and Rand Pauls and the wild men of the frontier kind of infiltrating the Republican Party. Then by 2016, they had completely taken it over. But then even from there, between 2016 and 2020, you have the the Tea Party folks who were then supplanted by the MAGA folks, where you've gone from Harvard-educated people pretending to be crazed rednecks to actual crazed rednecks running. And
well, not rednecks, but let's say, let's not call them.
I mean, that's like if you look at the ads that they're running in Georgia, and CK will talk about this, in the governor's race in 2018 for the Republican primary, they were riding around with deportation trucks. Brian Kemp had an ad where he said, well, I got this big pickup truck to take illegals down to the border, and then people reminded him that we border Florida. So I'm not quite sure where he was taking the truck to. So we talk about these crazy people. Well, this is the exact point that these people are completely off the reservation. And now in 2022, when you're looking at Herschel Walker, J.D. Vance, Dr. Oz, and some of these other kind of national figures that are running as Republicans, they're not even Republicans anymore. They have nothing involved with Republicans anymore. They are a new beast, a new breed that's more representative of what the Republican Party has always been, but truly is today. And I think you have to have a moment like that for the Democratic Party, not necessarily bringing in all the crazies and yahoos, but bringing in actual leadership that reflects the people you are campaigning to. I don't think Joe Manchin has a lot in common with your regular Democratic voter nationwide. I don't think many of these candidates that they tell us are quote unquote electable are that electable. I think rather they are the people that the party knows they can control. And if you look at the polling, things like student loan reform, broadly supported across the board, environmental reforms, broadly supported across the board. You have a whole list of issues that have 60, 70, 80% support with the American people that you can't get through even the Democratic Party, because the gatekeepers at the top want to make sure that these voices never become heard, that they never see the light of day, as opposed to Republicans who are...
No, hold that thought, because you're absolutely right. I got to run. I've got a hard break, but that's it. They guarantee that you don't see the light of day, and yet, I mean, we're cooperating with that, because you should be hearing Val Deming's name all day long. You should be hearing Mandela Barnes. You should be hearing Charles Booker, but we're not. In the meantime, according to this poll, Joe Manchin, according to NBC, is the least popular political figure in America. What? Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute. Did you see that poll that no one in corporate media, David and Aaron and CK and Robert are talking about? That he's the least popular political figure in America?
He's the least popular. He's the least popular political figure, but he is going to get reelected.
Unbelievable.
Least popular and most powerful.
Is it just me? There's no alignment there. Well, it's corporate alignment, because they're protecting him. They don't even let you know that he is a fossil fuel mogul. Hello? And then the corporate media wants to know why we don't trust them. They already know. We need to wake up, everybody. You've got to wake up. And I mean, and really the numbers for cable news are really, they're not big. People are not really looking at and trusting the news. That's why Twitter and all these other social media outlets have just blown up. That's why President Trump can talk about fake news, because on one level, he's right. People are like, oh, please. They have not trusted corporate media for the longest time. and all of this faux outrage, I'm just telling you, I'm disgusted by it. Because you've got these three extremely strong candidates. I think Raphael Warnock, well, I'm praying, CK, that he's going to get back in, but gee whiz, one never knows, does one?
Santita, my blood pressure has been.
Don't you dare! Don't you say that.
Some kind of way this morning. If I was feeling some kind of way when we were having discussion about slavery, but now that you've mentioned those magical words, Senator Raphael Warnock, and that this is a close race.
Unbelievable.
My blood pressure. It is a close race. It is. When we talk about travesties and what would be a travesty in the history of the United States, if Senator Raphael Warnock is not reelected and loses to Herschel Walker, I don't even know how we would be able to describe in history books what that means.
John Nichols is on the line.
About the American public.
Oh, but I do.
What that says about the state of Georgia.
I do.
But I will say that it will result in flight. People will leave the state of Georgia because that would be sheer lunacy.
No, don't leave. Don't leave. Please don't say what Joe Biden says. This is not who we are. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is.
No, I'm not saying it's not who we are. I'm saying that it informs where we are as a country.
That's what I'm just saying.
This is where we are, and that's not a pretty picture.
CK, we're voting on slavery in 2022. Come on, girl.
We're voting on slavery, and like I said, my heart. I had heart palpitations today when we were talking about that. But you see, the Herschel Walker issue is a whole nother type of issue that incites people to just say we are living in lunacy. Not these are difficult times, this is very challenging, but lunacy. That's a different type of issue. Lunacy. I'm not saying he's a lunatic. I'm saying we're living in a state of lunacy. That we could be in any state in this union where it's a close race between Senator Raphael Warnock and Herschel Walker. I'm not taking away his athletic prowess, his brilliance on a football field, and what he's accomplished in athletics. I'm not taking that away. That is very important. What I'm saying is something completely different. That we are in a state of lunacy if this is a close race in the state of Georgia.
We're back in 30 seconds.
There's no circumstances nowhere in the universe, on another planet, should this be a close race.
Well, you know what? I want John Nichols to respond to that. Now, CK, take that blood pressure pill.
You know, and I don't even have high blood pressure. I don't take any medication, but I'm feeling today some kind of way. But I'm going to go on mute because I think we should have others.
Change the world, change the world, we can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Oh my gosh. Oy, hey. My name is Santita Jackson from WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, AM 950 radio. We're talking about, wow, what a season. We're voting on slavery in Alabama, Louisiana, Oregon, Tennessee, Vermont. This is who we are, okay? We voted on slavery in Colorado, Nebraska, and Utah just in 2018. This is who we are. And you've got a man who denies climate change. I mean, and he just keeps on talking and talking. It just, my goodness, every time Herschel Walker talks, he just says something that makes you go, my gosh, bless your heart. I mean, are you all right? That's what you just say. But he and Raphael Warnock are, like almost neck and neck. Although Raphael Warnock is raising more money. How's he going to get over the hump? What about Mandela Barnes, the lieutenant governor of Wisconsin? Why aren't we hearing more about him on MSNBC? They should be talking about Mandela Barnes and Val Demings, the congresswoman from Florida, the former chief of police of Orlando. We should be talking about her every day. She won 1.2 million votes. She got more than 80% of her vote. What is the deal? Charles Booker, got more than 70% of the vote. What is the deal? There are more registered Democrats in the state of Kentucky. I know it's complicated, David, but wow, David Daley, just make the effort, y'all. They made it with Amy McGrath, and she was not a strong candidate. Nice person, but not strong. So everybody, I want you to call me at 773-763-9278. Attorney C.K. Hoffler, who has been going off for points. I'm not mad at her. And attorney Robert Tillo. Of course, they're both from WAOK. She hosts on Tuesdays at 11 Eastern Standard Time. He from 1 to 4 every Sunday. She's the chair of Rainbow Push. He is the Southeastern Regional Director for Rainbow Push. We've got New York Times bestselling author, senior fellow at Fair Vote, the brilliant David Daley. Get his 2 books, Rat Effed and Unrigged. If you want to know why we are where we are, get those 2 books. Look, the brilliant author, of course, John Nichols from The Nation magazine. There is so much we've got to talk about today. And, of course, someone who now denies poor little Kirsten Sinema, your girl, who used to be a progressive, who is...
Hey now.
Aaron. I'm like, gee whiz. I don't know. John Nichols, I mean, someone needs to help me understand, because we've been trying to parse this out. You've got these strong candidates. You've got Black and Latino candidates who are smashing fundraising records. I mean, in advance of moving into 2022, and their fundraising numbers have just continued to go through the roof. Indeed, they are dominating. Black and Latino candidates are dominating fourth quarter top fundraisers. That's a great thing, and that's according to Roll Call. A year ago, Black candidates were smashing fundraising records. Val Demings, Raphael Warnock, Mandela Barnes, and Charles Booker. But we're not hearing them in corporate media. We're not hearing about them. John, help me. Help us.
Well, I'll do my best. And look, I think there's a point of beginning here that's really important. If everything goes as it looks to be going right now, and that's pretty much an absurd statement because things never stay the same. But if things go the way they look to be going right now, there's a very good chance that the Democrats keep all the seats that they currently hold, and that they pick up 5 seats in the Senate. And that's unbelievable. That's unimaginable. But the reality is that, according to polling at this point, John Betterman in Pennsylvania is up double digits over Dr. Oz. That's not a surprise. Dr. Oz has proven to be a pretty ridiculous candidate. Mandela Barnes in Wisconsin is up 7 points over Ron Johnson, and that's quite impressive. That's a solid lead, not sufficient, but pretty good. In Ohio, Tim Ryan is running roughly even, sometimes even ahead in some polling with J.D. Vance. And in North Carolina, Judge Beasley, who really deserves attention. We're talking about all these other candidates. Judge Beasley out there she's running a great race, and there's polling that shows her essentially even with her opponent in a state that, by the way, has a Democratic governor and can elect Democrats. And then in Florida, we just got a poll last week that showed Val Demings up 4 points. So as we look across this map, what we see is there is something possible, not certain, for Democrats, and it could be a very transformative result. Right? This is a big deal, and I think that progressives, not just Democrats, but progressive independents, have to wrap their head around this. They have to recognize this possibility that in what they thought was going to be a dismissed election year, they could actually end up with very, very good results. Now, once they do that, once they wrap their head around that, then they've got to put energy into it. And the point that you make about media coverage is an important one, because it is very important that people around the country know that that's what's in play here. We don't have a presidential race this year, despite all the talk about Joe Biden and all the talk about Donald Trump. There's no presidential race on the ballot, but there is a Senate race this year. There's also House and governors and that. But that contest for control of the Senate is, it's the marquee race in many senses. And it's the thing that should be talked about every night. And they should be looking at all these contests. And here's the final thing. I will say that while I think there should be attention to all this, I don't think these candidates should spend all that much time on MSNBC or CNN or any of these other networks. I think they should be spending their time heavily on media in their own states. There can be a mistake that people make sometimes where they spend so much time talking to national audiences that they lose sight of what they need to do. And I will just emphasize to you that, as an example, Mandela Barnes in Wisconsin, you don't see him a lot on national TV. He'll go on if he's asked, and he's very good at it. But by and large, he's spending his time in small towns and small cities across Wisconsin where he needs to get the votes. And I will tell you from on the ground in Wisconsin that Mandela Barnes is running a pretty remarkable campaign. It is clearly getting traction. I will also tell you, as somebody who just wrote about Val Demings, she is really getting traction in Florida. And I'll close off by saying the issue in Florida that has given Val Demings a real chance at winning this race is abortion rights. She has been outspoken and clear, and her opponent, Marco Rubio, is someone who does not believe in abortion rights, even in cases of rape and incest. He has said that he personally does not believe in that. He's also got a striking track record of voting for very extreme measures as regards women. And Val Demings is bringing this out in a very nuanced, very smart, very effective way that respects people having different views, respects people having different beliefs, but says the bottom line is you can't impose an anti-choice position on a state or a nation where the majority of people want to have that choice. And it's proven to be a very effective message.
Well, and I agree with that. And I don't think they should be spending their time on corporate media anyway. Not at all. They should be with the people. I'm talking about what corporate media ought to be doing as they are trying to get inside of my head, because it's called programming, right? That's what it's called. So when they exclude you, and we saw this with Reverend in 84 and 88. We saw it. We've seen it before. We see it all the time. We see it with them building up Trump. If they wanted to bury Trump, they could have done it. They didn't have to mention a word about him. We would have been like, well, where is he? Where is he? He would not even be a story. But the corporate media continues to build him up. They know exactly what they're doing. And that for me is problematic because yes?
I was just say they're obsessive about Trump, right? They can't imagine.
I'm disgusted by that.
And I will say it's important. Our media in this country isn't good at covering races that are of a place, right? Because the way to do that is not to have a bunch of pundits sitting in Washington talking about it. You actually have to report from that place. You got to send reporters out and actually get on the ground and see what's happening. And even that has flaws because very often somebody parachutes in for a day and says, "Oh, I know everything about this state." Florida, as an example, is an incredibly complex state. I lived there for a while, and there are so many nuances, so many divisions, so many communities, and people make the mistake too often of saying, "Oh, the Hispanic vote's going to go this way." Well, you have Puerto Ricans, you have Puerto Ricans, Cuban Americans, people from all over Latin America, South America, with different values, different concerns, different interests. And a smart campaign is going to speak to them on all sorts of levels. And for our national media, too frequently, they don't recognize that. They just look at a simplistic bottom line. What's striking about Val Demings in Florida, and I'm emphasizing her today because I do think that there's been a lack of sufficient attention to her campaign.
Absolutely.
What's interesting about her, what's fascinating about her, is that she has run a very full range campaign. She's spoken to all these different communities. She's reached out on all the different linguistic communities in Florida, all the different ethnic communities, and it's been with this very strong, very personal message. She tells her own story, and then she speaks on the issues. Well, on Tuesday, there are 67 counties in Florida. Val Demings was running against a former majority whip of the state house and the legislature, a prominent lawyer. She had a real opponent, and she won 65 of 67 counties.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a pretty remarkable result.
There's no question. And my only point here is that she's running an extraordinary campaign. Mandela Barnes is running an extraordinary campaign. Charles Booker is running an extraordinary campaign. And they have won their primaries by huge majorities. And I know the game. You and I know the game. All of us on this panel know the game. When these people want to build you up, they do. And when they want to bury you, they also know how to do that. And the fact that we're not hearing about Val Demings, a woman who was the chief of police of the city of Orlando. What? Are you serious? You mean to tell me you can't tell me about Charles Booker, who had 5% name recognition in 2018 and almost became the nominee in 2018? Really? But not for Chuck Schumer jumping in and giving us Amy McGrath, who lost anyway. Oh, come on.
Right.
I mean,
can I say one more thing?
Yeah.
Can I say one more thing about Charles Booker that's really important? Charles Booker deserves coverage because of the remarkable vision that he has. And with his hoods to the holler, that notion of connecting urban voters with rural voters, which he has lived. He has gone down to the most remote areas of Kentucky and stood with, striking railroad workers and coal miners and others. He has been in, Louisville and its toughest neighborhoods. He's been in the mid-sized cities across that state. He has run a Rainbow Coalition campaign.
And he has said that. He has said to us, I modeled my campaign on Reverend Jackson's campaign. Please, the Obama campaign was modeled on Reverend's campaign. It's just that he's a centrist Democrat. I mean, because it's a winning, it was a brilliant, brilliant strategy that Reverend and so many people who worked with him pulled together. After Reverend's, at that time, nearly 30 years of political organizing and grassroots organizing, because people would, I spoke with one of his Secret Service agents. He said, sometimes we'd land in a city, Santita, and Reverend would have the schedule in his head because he would just vex the Secret Service because they wouldn't have a schedule. He'd be like, no, I'm going to go to this church, this church, and this church. And then I'm going to walk through this neighborhood. And they were like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this. Well, thank goodness he did it that way. But you know what? This goes to something that Robert Patillo has been saying, that he said one of the challenges that Stacey Abrams is having, because she's been now doing some outreach, Robert, to Black men. And you said months ago that this was going to be a problem. Attorney Griggs, president of the NAACP of Georgia, said the same thing, that she had too much outside advice. Can you speak to that? Is Robert still there? Well, he was speaking of the consultants.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Robert. Okay.
Yeah, sorry. I thought you were still talking to.
No.
But on that point, I think that kind of the prevailing issue is making sure that you have local voices in campaigns, because often the DNC and the DCCC and the Democratic Leadership Conference and all these other fundraising organizations, they like to take local issues and try to inject them into or they take national issues and try to inject them into local races. They want everybody kind of singing from the same piece of paper, whether it fits those local jurisdictions or not. I think what's crucially important, and if you see the successful grassroots campaigns or the campaigns, they're able to speak directly to the issues of their voters, of their area, and speaking with those people, understanding what they're interested in, because the same talking points that work great in AOC's district don't work as well in Sanford Bishop's district. You can talk about some issues if you're Nancy Pelosi that you can't talk about if you're Hank Johnson, along those lines. And I think that what we've seen from the Abrams campaign is having a very huge head start with national attention, but then still running that national campaign on the state level and not being able to fully connect to voters in a way that would have allowed her to catch up on this gap that she's had with Brian Kemp thus far. And we're seeing that pivot happen now. We're seeing that as we get closer to Labor Day, the campaigns are starting to pivot and speak more to these local issues, meet with more local leadership. And I think that we've seen across the board the lack of outreach by the Democratic Party, particularly policy-wise, to African-American men. Just ask your your local candidate, what is your agenda for black men? The first thing they'll talk about is criminal justice reform. Crucially important, absolutely. Most black men aren't in prison, so that isn't automatically our number one issue. They'll talk about the kind of broad-based issues of the Democratic Party, but not focus in on a group that votes for them 80% of the time, the second highest performing group after black women for the party. And so I think when you don't have those local voices, where you're seeing the same Democratic quote-unquote political experts and consultants on TV now that you saw when it was Bush v. Gore, those people are no longer actually involved in running campaigns. Those people are professional talking heads. And when that is what's setting your policy, what is setting the talking points you're running on, you're going to have a disconnect. You're leaving, as we used to say in some campaigns back in the South, you're leaving a lot of meat on the bone there. So before you go try to get another piece of chicken, you get all the meat off the bone that you got right now. And we're missing out on that. I think that you're going to have to start getting investment from donors that allow these campaigns to run local races, talk to people that need to be talked to, address issues in a way that they need to be addressed, and that's how you make up the gap. That's how you maintain that majority in the House and majority in the Senate, and mandate going into the second half of the first term of the Biden administration.
We know, David, I think that John Nichols makes the brilliant point that you can't campaign locally. All politics are local. You can't campaign locally on MSNBC. I was simply just trying to make the point here that, the corporate media, they're not helping these people who I think that they ought to be behind. As complex as these states are, because Florida's complex, Kentucky's complex, Wisconsin is complex. Wisconsin veers sharply left and sharply right. It's just, that's America, really. What do you think is are these races that we've mentioned, are they winnable, and how can they win? David, you still there? Okay, well, let me pitch that back to you, John. Are these races winnable?
Sure.
As complex as the states are, as complex as American politics, there's so many pieces, there's so many moving parts in American politics today. What do you say?
No, there's a lot of moving parts. Well, yeah, and thanks for the question. There's a lot of moving parts, to be sure. But one of the things about nominating someone who is experienced, who's been in office before, who's been around, is that they know the moving parts. They can do what they need to do. And so let's take a look at the candidates we're talking about who are running well. John Betterman, a big lead in Pennsylvania. He's a former mayor, current lieutenant governor of that state. He's been around. He knows the state. He knows its nuances. He's running a campaign that he says will go to every county, every community in the state. Mandela Barnes, former state legislator, longtime community organizer, current lieutenant governor. He's won statewide. He knows the state. He has deep roots in Milwaukee, but he also is exceptionally well known in rural and farm country because he spent a lot of time there. Val Deming, former police chief of Orlando, member of Congress, somebody who has a high profile throughout the state and who, interestingly, from her law enforcement background, knows people in every county of the state and every part of the state. We keep running down this list. We're talking about people who actually know how to do it. So, yes, they can win. And in fact, the interesting thing is that they are winning. Right now, what's going on is that Democratic candidates are doing very well. This is going to cause panic in Mitch McConnell's office and among a lot of the Republicans. They're going to run increasingly negative, crude, destructive campaigns. They will try to ruin the reputation of these people who are ahead because it will be a desperate, ugly fall campaign. We have to be ready for that. And that's where it comes in. That's where the national coverage and the attention to these races comes to really matter, because it's important to call that out, to expose that, to be on top of it, so that then you've got, if you will, for lack of a better term, people have the back of these candidates who can win. But my bottom line is, this is shaping up as a very different 2022 than an awfully lot of people expected. A lot of people thought it was a midterm election. The Democrats hold the White House and both houses of Congress, although narrowly, and that was just going to be the kind of election where Democrats face a great big setback. That was the assumption. Well, things change, and people have to wrap their head around that change. First change, Donald Trump gave the Republicans a bunch of lousy candidates. They've got candidates in a lot of states who aren't very good. Number two, Democrats nominated some terrific candidates, really strong candidates with deep roots in their states and the knowledge of how to run and win. Number three, the economy is still difficult. Inflation is a huge issue, but it has begun, especially with gas prices dropping, to stabilize a little bit. People are starting to feel, I think, a little bit of hope there. And finally, the Democrats have proven at the last minute to be reasonably effective at getting things done in Congress, passing big bills, making major actions on things, everything from student loans to the Inflation Reduction Act to the CHIPS Act. Put all these pieces together, and you've got a scenario where the answer to your question is, yes, Democrats can win. Now, of course, the challenge is in the next 75 or roughly 75 days to see if they do win.
Absolutely. Well, all I ask is that they get behind Charles Booker the way they got behind Amy McGrath. I just ask them to get behind Val Demings the way they get behind establishment Democrats, the ones they send to us, not the people we send to them. I maintain the people send the strong. The establishment send the weak. The people who are easily manipulated, the people who do not stand for the people. And those times have changed. The ground is shifting underneath us. Dr. Max Wolf, who's on my show every week, said that the world we left in 2019 and 2020 is not the world to which we have returned in 2022, which is why you're seeing Black and Latino candidates outdistance all other candidates in fundraising in the fourth quarter, according to this roll call report. That's why Black candidates have been smashing fundraising records. People are looking for some folks who are going to go to Washington and to the State House and downtown who are going to fight for you. So make that happen. You know what? I'm just saying, continue to grade the corporate media. Continue to grade them, but don't depend upon them. Get the information and think for yourself. And these are national campaigns, everybody. We all have a vested interest in Charles Booker and Val Demings and Mandela Barnes and John Fenterman and on and on and on. We have a vested interest in all of them winning. Absolutely. That's what I believe. So get out there and help them. Help them help us. And call out corporate media for not helping them, for raising up Donald Trump every single day. I love you, everybody. God bless you. Can't wait to be with you on Keep Hope Alive on Sunday at 7 o'clock. Until then, have a great day. My people, my people, my people. CK, do you want to say anything else? Are you going to be on Court TV today? Should I ask you that? Okay. Am I by myself? Oh, not.
I'm here with you.
Okay.
I'm here.
Well,
I'm here, Santita. Thank you so much.
No, well, hey, no. I got to get some closing thoughts. Wait a minute, Aaron, because you've worked in one. I just don't know what to make of Arizona, but here we go. Whew.
Arizona will always be the wild, wild west in every way, but there are some great chances for statewide candidates out there. As you mentioned, Donald Trump has not given us the best candidates to work with. So Terry Lake out there.
I love his candidates. I love them. Keep on doing. He needs to keep on doing what he's doing. How about that?
So the Secretary of State, Katie Hobbs, is up against Trump's candidate, who's, as we see, folks who have been around the state, who have been in the legislature, who have elevated themselves to state office and really have a shot at some of those statewide races. As far as Mark Kelly's concerned, that's going to be a very important seat to hold on to as well. But I think what we're looking at right now is the momentum is blue. And the momentum in politics, as everyone on your panel knows, is the most important thing. So if we can really make some strategic investments, not only in some of the national organizing and putting those boots on the ground to hit those doors, to make those calls from different parts of the country and really talk to these voters, I think we got a shot. I'm hopeful.
I think we've got more than a shot. I think we've got more than a shot. I just, look, they're going to have to campaign from person to person. John and I went through this with Reverend when he shocked the world, and Al Gore was supposed to push him out of the campaign in '88. That's the way the Democratic National Committee had set it up. Reverend ended up pushing him out of the campaign because on Super Tuesday, which they had never had before, he placed first and second in every southern state. No one expected that. So you can do it. We can win. But I think at the same time, we need to engage in critique of these structures that we're supposed to be trusting. Okay, John, because every time I talk to people, I remember when I first went on Fox News, people were like, oh my God, Santita, I can't believe you're going to be on Fox. I'm like, sweetie, you have no friends in media. Get over that. Okay? You don't have any. So just get over that and get in. If someone wants you and you can work out a good relationship with them, go on and say your piece and keep it moving. Okay? I still think we need to call out these media outlets, John, and Aaron, and Robert, and David, whoever else is still there, if CK had to go. I think we need to call them out when they do not speak to the needs of the people, John. These are people who are winning by huge margins. Their stories need to be told. People don't know enough about what Val Demings is doing. They don't know enough about the incredible way that she won. No one's talking about the incredible way that Charles Booker ran. He was a crawl. He was a caption. Mandela Barnes, incredible. What Raphael Warnock is doing in the heart of Dixie is incredible. Even with Herschel Walker. Because, quite frankly, the white power structure does not mind a mind-addled black man. He's so controllable. This is a man who was sick, who's mentally ill. And that is not funny. Not only did he play professional football, I mean, CTE to me would be an issue, but he has acted out in his personal life in ways that make you question what is going on with this man. He's not well. But they don't mind him because you can control him. They don't want Raphael Warnock. He's not controllable. So, I mean, when I see the corporate media not lifting this up, no, I call them out, John, because I've been watching them all my life, and I just think we need to do that. In the meantime, you're right. These candidates need to go on about their business and campaign in their communities and win these races. But I got to call out corporate media too. John?
Well, I don't think these things are separate.
No, they're not.
Obviously, I don't know as much about the dynamics of the Florida or the Georgia race and Herschel Walker, but I can tell you about Wisconsin, and I can tell you that Ron Johnson, the senator from Wisconsin, has been an embarrassment again and again and again, spouting conspiracy theories, advancing extreme positions, really separating himself in so many ways from the state of Wisconsin. His loyalty is clearly to Donald Trump and to right-wing talk radio, not to, grassroots people in Wisconsin. So the genius of Mandela Barnes as a candidate is that he is spending a lot of time there in grassroots Wisconsin. Mm-hmm. It's proving to be very effective. But separate from that, national media coverage, here's the deal. If you turn on most of the cable channels, you're going to see wall-to-wall coverage of, the play out of the Mar-a-Lago search. You're going to see wall-to-wall coverage of whatever's happening in Washington, particularly around the White House. And that's fine. That all has to be covered. But you don't need that 24/7. There's plenty of time to go out and do good, strong profiles of each of these races, right? And to get into some races that aren't being covered at all. There's a terrific candidate running against John Thune out in South Dakota. There are a lot of these races in, Charles Booker in Kentucky, which are hard races. Let's be honest. These are uphill races. But boy, if they get attention, if you start to focus on them, then some of those dynamics begin to change. Because media coverage, as we know from the history of the civil rights movement, from everything we know about politics, media coverage can change a dynamic. It can make people start to, support a cause. It can make people engage in other ways. it can also give people on the ground in a particular state a certain confidence, right? They're like, well, people around the country are watching us. That's important. And so, yeah, I agree with your concerns that there just needs to be better campaign coverage. And I guess my bottom line would be to say that most of our media today doesn't really cover politics. It really covers gossip.
Yes.
And it's interested in, who likes who and doesn't like who and who's mad at who and who says what about who, rather than, fundamental issues. And if you start to cover fundamental issues, then you know that people have a lot that unites us, but we also have our distinct concerns. And speaking to those distinct concerns, of different communities, of different regions of a state, that matters. And a good political figure actually gets that. And again, what I'll say is what I said before during the show. When I look at these races around the country, what powerfully strikes me, what really stands out to me is that in most of these races where the Democrats are doing well, they have experienced candidates who know their state. They understand these nuances. They understand these dynamics. And that's why I think they're doing very well.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that they can. But like I said, that having been said, you are clear when people want to bury you, when they want to bury a candidacy, and when they want to help one. I mean, I've just been watching it all my life. And when you say, oh, Democrats, we need a majority. Okay. You have three people who are well positioned. If Democrats wanted to deploy President Obama and John Legend, all these celebrities to Kentucky, they could do that, John. They could.
Of course.
Or some people who are regionally connect. They could do that, John. They could. And maybe he doesn't need that, but I think that I, as a talk show host, and as someone who's a member of this media, should say, "Come on, y'all. Where are the cameras? Where are you? Where are you?"
I agree, and I think attention to these races matters. And also, it's not bad to have a celebrity come in now and again. That's fine. It's the danger is to rely so heavily on celebrities that the campaign seems to be delinked from the place where it's being run.
But these guys won without the celebrities. I'm talking about just a little bit of sizzle, and I think it's negligence for these media outlets not to cover their campaigns, not to talk about someone who rationed his insulin. I mean, are you serious? Yeah, that's a real issue for people. People are dying because of that. And you won't talk about that? You won't talk with Charles Booker, who's been homeless? No.
They don't want to talk about that, Santita, because that means they have to talk about actual price caps instead of just.
And that's my point. And you know what I'm saying? And I'm saying that's a corporatist agenda, and it's the corporatist media. They're not trusted by most Americans, and there's a reason for that. And I just think that we have an obligation to call them out on it. I really believe that. We need to call them out on it. Because people will quote me chapter and verse what Rachel Maddow said, love her. Joy Reid said, love her. Katie, all these folks, love them, they're great. But what are y'all talking about? Because if you're not talking about these races that are winnable, that need all of our help, then you're not helping me. And no, these candidates don't need to be in these studios in New York. They could sure would benefit from some focus. So it's just a thought. I mean, it's just very frustrating. Very, very. I even saw how they handled my brother in this race, because they don't want someone from the actual civil rights movement, not someone who says they're an organizer. Okay, that's easy to say. You can say, "Hey, come with me." You call yourself an organizer, okay? You organize one person, or at least you called out. But they don't want us in that space, because we might say something that would upend everything. Because we're going to fight ostensibly for peace and justice. We're going to do that. They don't want that. They want George Bush's family back in office, right? That's who they promote. They want the establishment back. They don't want people who have been dissidents anywhere near this. And we need to be clear on that. I see it all the time. I see it every single day. So, but John, what should we be looking out for as we move forward?
Well, I do think people should be paying a lot of attention to this Cummings race in Florida. She's on the rise. She's doing really, really well. And her primary showing emphasizes that, but the really important number is that she's up 4 points in a poll from the University of North Florida. So she's a viable candidate. And that's something Democrats have to wrap their head around. Florida's been a hard state for Democrats in recent years,
yes,
but it is not an unwinnable state. The other thing is, too, I have to pay, again, one last bit of honor to Charles Booker, because the race that Charles Booker's running in Kentucky is a hard race. No question, it's uphill. But he is doing it in exactly the right way. He's going to every corner of that state. And win or lose, he's going to leave a rainbow-style legacy. He is going to have organized people across lines of race and lines of ethnicity and lines of class into a united rainbow coalition front that is going to have resonance in that state for decades to come.
Well, see, and that's my point, because to me, he's a Bernie Sanders figure, right? Which is the Jackson model. Because I've talked to him and I've talked to his campaign. I'm like, whether you win this race or not is less important than what you are building here. You're building something that's so much bigger than an office. That's so much bigger than this race. And this is very important. This is the work that you're doing. Reverend won. He lost the race, but he won. And now we're seeing him. We're seeing this young man Frost down in Florida pop up. We're watching all these black folks and Latinos who are getting into first of all, who got into the U.S. House of Representatives. That's how we got Bernie Sanders, through Reverend. He just keeps winning every day. The rainbow keeps winning. We keep winning. And I think we need to really we need to assume the responsibility for that, not just the credit, John and Aaron. And I don't know if Robert is still there, but we need to assume the responsibility. And when I say assume the responsibility, that means not just the credit. Oh, no, that's too small. I mean the responsibility. We need to tell our story and help young people who are coming behind us to build upon that legacy. We ran for president with a Kentucky Fried Chicken bucket, literally. We couldn't pay to get from, and John, you remember this because you were part of it. We couldn't pay to get from one venue to the next. We had to jump in the car with the press, who had per diem and who had cab fare. They were like, this is the most disorganized, crazy campaign we ever. It wasn't disorganized. We were running on the people's mandate. And so we couldn't wait for the money. The big money wasn't going to come. You know who some of our big funders were? It was Bill and Camille Cosby. It was Dick Griffey, who owned Solar Records. It was Don Cornelius. It was Percy Sutton. Oh, yeah. Some of these black businessmen. Oh, yeah. It was Casey and Gene Kasem, who basically ran the campaign out of their Beverly Hills mansion. Casey Kasem, America's Top 40, who rented a bus and started in Michigan. He said the greatest concentration of Arab Americans, which he was, is in Michigan. And without our knowledge, John, he rented a bus and went from city and town to town before we even knew it. While we were saying run, Jesse, run, he hadn't even announced yet. Casey Kasem was already on the bus during the weeks when he wasn't taping his show. No, it can be done.
Yeah.
He did that. I will give Casey Kasem that credit today. May he rest in peace, because he did that. He and Gene Kasem did that, and they had kids sleeping on their floor in their home, making signs, driving them to the campaign office. Oh yeah, they did that. They did that. Then we got to San Francisco in 1984. Got to Chinatown. These people are not openly demonstrative about candidates. We had at the entrance of Chinatown. You remember this, John and Aaron? It was a sight to behold. Welcome Jesse Jackson delegates. They didn't welcome anybody else. And if they saw you come into the store, you coming in? Are you here for the convention? Yes. You with Jesse Jackson? Yes. Oh, you got free food. You're like, no, no, no. They're like, no, no, no. He's our guy. He's our guy. Come on. You win every day. And I believe we have to call out corporate media as they play these games with us, as you have someone who's on the right, someone who's on the left, but they're BSing all of us all in the middle because they are not pushing these campaigns. They're not, don't even push the campaign. Just tell the story. That's all I'm asking. Just tell the story. That's fair, John. You're a journalist. You understand. That's fair. Aaron, that's fair. What they're doing is absolutely unfair, and more people mistrust them every single day, and you should. You need to get some information for yourself. I told you to think for yourself. That's part of my mission here on the Santita Jackson Show. I just want you to think for yourself. That's what I want you to do. So does anyone else have anything to say before I run out of breath? Because I have to go get my hair done this morning. Yes, I do. Yes, I'm keeping it 100.
Thank you for this conversation.
I'm keeping it 100. Yes, I'm gonna get this done, real and fake. Get it all done today. John, what do you want us to look out for? I mean, we are within 100 days of this midterm. It's hard to believe that that November, that this first Tuesday in November is not even 100 days away.
Mm-hmm. Look, it's actually 75, so roughly 75 days.
Great.
It's moving very, very fast. And I think that the core thing to understand is that at this point, Democrats are in a very good position, much better than they ever expected to be in this midterm election cycle.
Did you expect this at all? Did you?
No, I didn't think they'd see this kind of rise. And I would just emphasize that they may fall again, because this is an incredibly turbulent time. And so when you're up, when you're running strong, that's the time to build on your strength, right? That's the time to expand the map, to start to recognize that you can win in more places, not less, right? And the biggest mistake that Democrats make, and I think politicians in general make, is that when they try to win narrowly, when they try to win by 1 seat or 2 seats, Democrats now have an opportunity to win by 4 or 5 seats, maybe more. And if they understand that and they go for it, the potential from this race or this year could be very, very different than anyone expected to start. So that's all. That'd be, you asked for a final message. That's my final message, is that, there's a position of strength now. Build on that. Don't get satisfied with it. Don't think you've come far enough. Understand that now you've gotten to the point where you can see the top of the mountain, right? You can see where you're headed, right? And it's close enough that it seems doable, but you're not there yet, right? There is still a lot of climbing to do. And so this is the time to get up a little earlier, climb a little more, keep at it, into the evening, work hard in all of these states and give support to people, have their back, because my goodness, if in early November, you can look at a situation where the United States Senate is no longer 50-50, but maybe 54-46 or 55-45 for the Democrats, I mean, trust me, that all the work will have seemed worthwhile.
I believe it. I absolutely agree. And the converse could be true as well, which means we need to work even harder. Aaron, your thoughts before we go. Is Aaron still there? Well, then let me just ask you this very quickly. Do you think that, I heard President Biden speaking yesterday. I always want to respect him in the office. But he's like Joe because we've known him for so long, bless his heart. Do you think what do you think is are reproductive rights going to be the hinge upon which this election turns, or what? Because he went through a whole litany. Voting rights are on the ballot, reproductive rights, and he just went straight down the list. Is there any one issue or two that you think will turn the election? Do you think that reproductive rights are playing this much of a role?
Are you asking me, Santita?
Yeah.
Look, I don't think any one issue ever carries the day. There's always an array of issues, and people divide up on issues, so they can pull and push in different ways. But with that said, reproductive rights have proven to be a much bigger issue in 2022 than anyone expected. In part, that is because of the Supreme Court's action. Now, these issues, which people always cared about, are very, very real, very immediate, very urgent. And so I think it is having a big impact. And the best measure of that is in congressional races where they've had special elections. In Nebraska and Minnesota, now they just had one in New York State, a couple in New York State just the other day. In every one of those races, the Democratic candidates are running ahead of where Joe Biden was, ahead of expectations. So there are definitely people coming out and voting because they're concerned about the choice issue. It's having an impact already. And frankly, if that improvement in Democratic position continues, then Democrats are going to be in a very good position to take the Senate, to hold the Senate. And they've got at least an outside chance of holding the House. And I'll give you one example out of New York State before we sign off today. And that is in the New York special election where Pat Ryan won the seat as a Democrat, very big win, where he won, 58% of the new registrations were women. Think about that. That is a big advantage as regards women. And analysts are saying the reason that women were registering in bigger numbers and coming out to vote in bigger numbers, much bigger numbers, was because of, at least in part, because of the choice issue. And I think that's right. And so there is the potential in 2022 for a wave of new voters, especially younger women, who have the potential to transform our politics. And that transformation will, in most cases, I think in almost all cases, be beneficial to the Democrats.
Everybody, you let me know what you think. Make sure that you are registered to vote, everybody. Go to vote.org. Make sure that you have not been purged from the voter rolls. You can find out where you vote. And get registered to vote. Get registered, get registered. This is a big election. Each election is big. Each one. Think about where we did not participate and how we lost these state houses. How we dropped the ball on a lot. So we got to pick up the baton, everybody. It's our turn, and it's our time. What did Reverend Jackson say? Our time has come. There's that. Blessings to you, Aaron Connolly, and Aaron. Boy, I was tired last night. I just fell out. And of course, John Nichols. Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Bless your heart. D-Ray, I wish I could grab a big breakfast, but I'll grab something needed after I get my hair done because I can't be late. I love you, girl. Since I'm doing this new thing. You like it? I hadn't planned to do anything like this, but I'm glad I've done it. It's been kind of liberating, right? I love you. Love y'all. But I love you, John. I love you, Aaron. I love you, Robert. I love you, CK. I love you, David. I love you, Dr. Knighton. I love you. Pastor Tisha Dixon Williams, everybody who made this show work, and of course, Paul Chivari. Sending you all much love, everybody. I'll see you on Keep Hope Alive with Reverend Jesse Jackson on Sunday at 7 a.m. on iHeartRadio, on the iHeartRadio network. Patriot AM 1150 out in Orange County, California. It's their largest superstation. They are our home station, and the Buzz in Cincinnati and all of that. So I love you, love you, love you. Love all of you. Love you, love you, love you. Thank you, girl. Thank you, Jewel. I'll see you all on Sunday. God bless.